The Project Gutenberg ebook of Jogging Round the World. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. Title: Jogging Round the World. Riders and drivers, with curious steeds or vehicles, in strange lands and at home. Author: Edith Dunham. Release date: March 1, 2024. Ebook number 73081. Language: English. Original publication: United States, Frederick A. Stokes Company, 1905. Credits: Fiona Holmes and the online distributed proofreading team at https://www.pgdp.net. This file was produced from images generously made available by the Internet Archive. Start of the Project Gutenberg ebook. Jogging Round the World. Jogging Round the World. Playfellows of the Frozen Arctic. Eskimo Children and Their Tame Bear from Stereograph. Copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. Jogging Round the World. Riders and drivers, with curious steeds or vehicles, in strange lands and at home, with stories and descriptions by Edith Dunham, with numerous illustrations from copyrighted stereographs by Underwood and Underwood, New York, published by Special Arrangement, New York, Frederick A. Stokes Company, publishers. Copyright 1905, by Frederick A. Stokes Company, published in October 1905. Contents page. In the Land of the Eskimos. 9. In the Old Park at Nara. 10. A Japanese lady in a yarmulke. Agio. 12. The Unicycle of Korea. 14. A Korean lady in her palanquin. 16. A Korean general in the streets of Seoul. 18. Cebu, in the Philippines. 20. A Carabao tandem in Luzon. 22. Going into Shanghai. 24. In Canton, China. 26. The hansom cab of Colombo, Ceylon. 28. Riding in a palanquin in Calcutta. 30. A two-storied camel wagon at Agra. 32. An elephant from Caper. 34. A bullock cart in Agra. 36. The royal carriage of Rewa. 38. On the road to Jericho. 40. The tombs of the caliphs, Egypt. 42. The pyramids and the Sphinx in Egypt. 44. On the desert of Sahara. 46. Before the Petrovsky Palace in a Troika. 48. Near Villefranche. 50. In Seville. 52. Return from grape picking, Malaga. 54. Driving a dog team in Holland. 56. A carriage of the 16th century, Sweden. 58. Taking a ride in Thurso, Scotland. 60. Off for a holiday in a jaunting car. 62. In Puerto Rico. 64. In Cuba. 66. Ormond Beach, Florida. 68. The Old City of St. Augustine. 70. In North Carolina. 72. An ox cart in southern Mississippi. 74. In Central Park. 76. On an ostrich farm. 78. In the Land of the Eskimos. Isn't this a strange playmate? Would you like to have a bear to play with? The little Eskimo children on the sledge are having a very happy time. They are merry little children, always smiling and happy, even in the long winter nights when the sun does not shine for months at a time. Wouldn't you think it queer to have such a long night as that? When winter is coming, their father builds a low, dome-shaped house of ice and snow, with a funny little door, through which one goes into a passageway, then into a big room where the whole family lives. A lamp burns in there, filled with whale blubber or fat, and having a wick of dried turf. This makes a smoky light, but it warms the house, and the Eskimos think their winter home very comfortable. In the long, cold season, the father sometimes makes a sledge like the one in the picture. It is made of pieces of wood, with runners of ivory from the tusks of walrus, and sometimes with pieces of reindeer horn. The whole is fastened together with straps made of skin either from the reindeer or seal. It takes a long time to make a sledge, for the Eskimos do not have very good tools to work with, and have to work slowly. Usually the sledges are drawn by dogs. You have seen pictures of them, haven't you? As many as 12 often draw a sledge, and they run very rapidly over the ice and snow, while their master keeps them in order with his long-lashed whip. In the old park at Nara, see these happy Japanese girls enjoying their ride through the park, in rickshaws. They look very comfortable and cool in their kimonos, don't they? The park they are riding in is at Nara and is such a beautiful place. It is there that a very tame herd of sacred deer is kept. Nara is on the island of Hondo, Japan, and is a very old city, famous for its carvings, cutlery, and toys. You would enjoy seeing the toys that are made there, wouldn't you? India ink and fans come from there, too. Perhaps your little fan, or your sister's, was made in Nara. Did you know that all the figures on a Japanese fan mean something, and sometimes a whole story is connected with them? The parasols, too, are interesting, and the designs on them are not arranged simply to look pretty, but each has its meaning to the Japanese people. In Nara, as in most of the Japanese cities, there are some noted temples, and the carving in a few of them is said to be the finest in Japan. In one of the temples is a huge bell over 13 feet high. Would you like to hear it? In another is a statue of Buddha more than 10 times as tall as you are, the biggest one in Japan. In Nara, too, are storehouses in which there are specimens of articles used in the imperial household hundreds of years before our grandfathers lived. A ride in the old park at Nara, Japan. Pretty Japanese maidens in rickshaws from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. A Japanese lady in a Yamake Agio. This does not look like a very safe way of traveling, does it? The bridge is so narrow and the water rushes by so rapidly that we should not enjoy crossing in a Yamakago, mountain chair. The Japanese people are used to going this way over mountain roads and rough places, so they do not mind. This little bridge is near Nikko, sunny Splendor, a very beautiful city at the foot of a great mountain range in Japan. A long avenue lined with cryptomerias, a kind of cypress tree, leads to the city, making a picture worth seeing, with the tall, pinkish trunks and masses of green against the blue sky. Often one gets a glimpse of some temple wonderfully carved and colored, or a waterfall rushing down. The temples and waterfalls are famous, and also the mausoleum of Ieyasu, the most wonderful man in Japanese history. A long flight of stone steps leads to a marvelously carved gate, inside of which is a court with storehouses full of ancient treasures, and a stable with a wonderful frieze of monkeys. In the stable is the sacred steed said to bear away the spirit of Ieyasu. Through a bronze gate, then through another gate of white and gold, one passes through court after court until the shrine is reached. Another interesting thing in Nikko is the red lacquered bridge over the river Daya. Only the emperor is allowed to cross this bridge. Japanese lady in a Yamakago, mountain chair, crossing the Daya River near Nikko, Japan from Stereograph, copyright 1904, by Underwood and Underwood, New York. The unicycle of Korea. We very often see bicycles and tricycles, but did you ever before see a unicycle like this? The uncomfortable looking vehicle can only be used by very high officials in Korea, and it is a mark of great distinction to have 4 coolies instead of 2. See the very elaborate robes of the High General. I should think he would have to sit very still on his high seat. A coolie marches ahead of him carrying his robe of state when he goes to the royal palace. Korea is a strange country. The people look like the Japanese, the customs are somewhat like those of the Chinese, and yet the Koreans are quite different from either. The country is hilly, and when walking one no sooner gets to the bottom of one hill than he begins to go up another. Korea is famous for its paper, which is very strong and does not tear easily. The houses have partitions and windows of oiled paper. Glass is quite uncommon. Looking down into Seoul, the chief city, from the wall one is reminded of a bed of mushrooms. The houses are one-storied, with sloping roofs tiled or covered with turf, and very close together. The wall has 8 gates, each with a name, as, Gate of Amiability, Gate of Everlasting Ceremony. The northern gate is up on a high hill, from which at night signal lights shine out to let the people know if all is well with Korea. One of the most curious vehicles of the world, the unicycle of Korea. Used for high generals from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. A Korean lady in her palanquin. If we were in Seoul, we could not see this lady in the palanquin, because the curtains would be closely shut. The Korean ladies of the higher classes are seldom seen by anyone outside of their households, and the middle-class women, if they have to walk on the street, have a peculiar garment, with long, loose sleeves, which they put over their heads. The sleeves hang down, looking like a curious kind of ears, and the cloak is held closely before the face so that it cannot be seen. Would you like to take a walk through the streets of Seoul, and see the crowds of strangely dressed people, the many one-storied houses and the booths? Perhaps we should meet the water coolie who goes about all day carrying water to anyone who wants it. He has a queer way of carrying it, too. A long pole is fastened crosswise on his shoulders by straps going under and around his arms. From this pole hang 2 buckets or pails. There are many beautiful palaces in Seoul, with pretty little lakes and ponds in the gardens. Some of these lakes are covered with lotus flowers, and there is usually a tiny island in the center with a tree on it, under which one can sit and enjoy the pretty garden. One of the very interesting things to see in Seoul is an old marble pagoda which has been built so long that the people cannot remember who built it. Korean lady and maid, in the streets of Seoul, Korea. The curtain is seldom raised. From Stereograph, copyright 1904, by Underwood and Underwood, New York. A Korean general in the streets of Seoul. The Korean general in this palanquin must be a very important person indeed. See the large number of attendants he has. An ordinary palanquin is carried by 2 coolies. Only high officials, foreign consuls, or legal advisors of the emperor are supposed to have 4, and in the pictures we see at least 8 men taking this general through the streets of Seoul. Only 4 seem to be really carrying the chair, so the men at the side are probably not coolies. See, their hats and clothing are different from those of the coolies. The streets of Seoul are very wide, but look narrow because the shopkeepers put up booths in front of their houses, and spread out their wares before them, on mats or trays, so that there is not much room left. One very wide street has 2 rows of houses or booths down the middle, so it seems as though there were 3 narrow streets instead of 1 wide one. When the emperor passes through in procession, all these booths are taken down, and the street is swept and decorated in his honor. The next day the booths are put up again and affairs go on in quite the usual way. There is an interesting old bronze bell in Seoul, which used to be rung in the morning and at sunset. The gates of the city were closed at dark, and all the men had to stay at home and could not be out on the street, except at festival times. A Korean general carried in an official chair through the streets of Seoul, Korea. From Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. Cebu, in the Philippines. In Cebu the carriages of the natives are evidently not built for comfort, and the ones we see in the picture we should not find very agreeable to ride in, I am sure. This is the public square of Cebu, an old city on the island of Cebu, in the Philippines. Hundreds of years ago some Spanish people made a settlement there, and after that it was the capital city of the Philippines. Now it is still an important city, and large quantities of hemp are sent out from it to other parts of the world. Hemp, you know, is used to make ropes and sailcloth and that strong yellow wrapping paper called Manila paper. When growing, the hemp plant looks something like a banana tree, with big leaves in which is the fiber used to make rope. The native people have a rude sort of knife with which they scrape the pulp from the fiber, after which it is dried in the sun and then prepared for shipping. There is also a very fine fiber that the natives sometimes get in small quantities, out of which they weave a soft material that looks something like silk. This fiber brings higher prices than the coarser, but there is not so much of it to be had. It is very interesting to see the people at work, getting the hemp ready for market. Almost everything is done by hand, for no machinery has yet been made which can do the work so well. A family turnout in the public square, Cebu, Philippine Islands from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. A Carabao tandem in Luzano. Look at these strange animals with such wide-spreading horns. Do you know what they are? They are named carabaos, and are sometimes called water buffaloes because they are so fond of the water. Often through the day they go into the rivers or lakes and splash about, and if they are kept too long from their bath they are likely to go mad and become dangerous. They are very powerful animals and are used a great deal in the Philippine Islands in place of horses, to do farm work and draw carts. Do you see this queer carriage with the woven canopy top and the wooden wheels? Carts like this are used in the southern part of Luzon, which is the largest of the Philippine Islands. It is a beautiful island with many rivers and mountains, and there are also volcanoes. Do you know what a volcano is? It is a mountain with a deep hole or crater in it, in which there is a mass of fire, and gases which sometimes explode. When there is an explosion, great quantities of molten stuff called lava pour from the mouth of the volcano, sometimes burying villages at the foot of the mountain. A volcano is not a very pleasant neighbor, should you think so? Many of the islands of the Philippines were formed by volcanoes under the sea, that have thrown up masses of lava until a new island was made. A Tagalog tandem, Bambam, Luzon, Philippine Islands from Stereograph, copyright 1904, by Underwood and Underwood, New York. Going into Shanghai, this is a strange-looking thing to ride on, don't you think? It looks something like the wheelbarrows we use in our gardens, but the wheel is very large. Do you see how it goes up in the middle of the barrow? These Chinese people are going into Shanghai. They have come along a very sunny road, wouldn't you think their heads would ache? The Chinese women do not wear hats and they do not mind the heat. See how small their feet are, and yet they are very large compared with the feet of the ladies in higher classes, who could easily wear doll's shoes. Chinese shoes, the ordinary ones, are made of cloth, so when it rains the Chinese do not like to go out and get them wet. Let us follow these people to Shanghai and see what the city is like. It is a great shipping place, and the harbor is filled with queer-looking boats called junks. Shanghai is a busy place, and the streets are always crowded. In the native part they are extremely narrow and dirty. In the afternoons there is a great deal of driving on the chief road, Maloo. Here we should see all kinds of carriages, rickshaws, and barrows like the one in the picture. If we should meet a Chinese friend he would say, "Have you eaten rice?" instead of "How do you do?" They think our clothing very queer, and the men would not know what to do with pockets. Coming into town, Shanghai, China from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. In Canton, China. If we were in Canton we should probably have a ride in a palanquin something like this one. Do you think you would like it? This Chinese lady is evidently of a very rich family. See her silken robes, and her tiny foot. The women of the higher classes are seldom seen on the streets of Canton, they stay at home or are carried in closely curtained palanquins. Do you see the curtains in the picture? They are raised so that we can get a look at the Cantonese lady. If she were on a crowded street they would all be down. The streets of Canton are very fascinating, they have a long row of shops on either side, with wares all displayed. Some of the streets are only about 6 feet wide, and many of the shops have large signs at the sides, either upright or hung like the signs of old English inns, so that there is not much space for passers-by. The signs are sometimes black, sometimes scarlet, blue, or green, with characters of gold or scarlet, so the street is full of color. The street tradesmen are picturesque, particularly the barber, who carries over his shoulders a pole from which is suspended a bright scarlet stand with a brass basin resting on it. He wears loose trousers and blouse of dark blue and a broad-brimmed straw hat. The streets are almost always crowded, night and day. At night lanterns of painted glass or horn, and sometimes paper lanterns give a touch of color and make the streets look gay. A beautiful Cantonese girl in her palanquin, with maid attendant, Canton, China from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. The hansom cab of Colombo, Ceylon. Have you ever, when out in the country, seen an ox cart with 2 patient oxen drawing a load of hay or stones? Here we have a cab drawn by a little bullock, or zebu, which looks somewhat like those big oxen, but has a queer hump on his back and is very tiny. He looks gentle and kind, and no doubt trots about all day taking travelers through the streets of Colombo, in Ceylon. Do you know where that is? It is an island ever so far away in the Indian Ocean, and is the place where many pearls and precious stones are found. It is a very beautiful island, and the roads, winding along between palms of many kinds and strange plants, with bright-colored birds and butterflies fluttering in and out among the leaves, are wonderful. Little bright green lizards dart here and there over the beautiful plants, looking like rare jewels, and very pretty ferns and flowers are all around. Ceylon is such an interesting place to visit. There are ever and ever so many plantations where tea is grown, and rice, too. The laborers who work in the fields, and who draw the rickshaws we see in the picture, are called Tamils. The part of Colombo where they live is named Petta and is very picturesque. Their fruit shops look tempting, and there are many kinds of fruit with curious names, as papaws, lovi-lovas and rambutans. Would you like to taste them? The hansom cab of Colombo, Ceylon from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. Riding in a palanquin in Calcutta, what a beautiful road this is. Wouldn't you like to take a peep around the curve and see what is beyond? But such a queer way of traveling. These men can go very rapidly, but they have stopped here to let us look at them. The lady seems to be enjoying her ride very much in her palanquin. Isn't that a funny thing to ride in? This road is in one of the beautiful parks in Calcutta, the city in India where the Governor-General lives. It is such an attractive city, with so many parks and gardens. One where there are numberless kinds of animals, another filled with rare trees and plants. There are also many private gardens. There are so many fine buildings that Calcutta is sometimes called the City of Palaces. The most beautiful part of the city has a queer name, Chowringhi. Here there is a large park where there is much driving, sometimes the band plays and it is very gay. Black Town, where the natives live, is not so attractive, but very dirty, with narrow streets and ugly little houses of mud or bamboo. Here and there are idols made of plaster or painted wood, looking like those we sometimes see in pictures. The natives of Calcutta make many useful things, among them gunny bags, the very coarse bags that coffee and cotton are packed in. These bags are used by people all over the world. A lady in her palanquin going through the Geological Gardens, Calcutta from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. A 2-storied camel wagon at Agra. This is almost like a house on wheels, isn't it? There seem to be 2 stories in the wagon or carriage. We can see someone sitting in the upper part, and the lower floor appears to be filled with all sorts of things. How proud and haughty the camels look, with their noses up in the air. In what country would you expect to see this carriage? Yes, it is in India, at Agra, a very beautiful city. There are such wonderful buildings in Agra that we should want to stay there a long time and admire them. One is called the Moti Masjid, or Pearl Mosque, and travelers say that it is exquisite. It is all of marble and has 3 beautiful domes like immense bubbles floating in the air. The gem of Agra, though, is the Taj Mahal, a big tomb built centuries ago by one of the rulers, Shah Jahan, for his wife, whom he dearly loved. Just think, this building is standing now, after all these hundreds of years, and is still perfect. It has a beautiful big dome and a number of little ones, besides minarets and towers, and it looks like a marvelous dream building or a palace made by the fairies. Every little part of it is as perfect as a bit of jewelry. There are flowers inlaid in many colors, and exquisite mosaic work in different patterns, and in the dome is a wonderful echo that repeats a note again and again until it sounds like fairy music. Wouldn't you like to visit this wonderful place? 2-story camel wagons at Agra, India from Stereograph, copyright, 1904, by Underwood and Underwood, New York. An elephant from Caper. Here is another elephant dressed in elaborate trappings. His saddle cloth is very gorgeously embroidered and fringed, and he has a cloth over his head, which seems to cover up his eyes, but perhaps he can see through the fringe. He even has a bracelet or anklet around one of his 4 feet. Do you see it? The owner of all this magnificence sits on the elephant's back in a howdah, a very much ornamented sort of chair. With all its splendor, I am sure we should not find this a comfortable way of traveling, for as the elephant lumbers along, the howdah pitches first in one direction, then in another. We should feel as though we were at sea, and in the hot sun, without the bracing air we get on the water, it might be an unpleasant motion. This elephant comes from Caper, a state in the western part of India. It is a very hot part of the country, and we should probably not be able to live there more than 4 months in the year, as the rest of the time it is intensely hot. Many of the Hindu people of Caper own large numbers of oxen, camels, sheep, and goats, so they do not settle in one place to live, but go about, stopping wherever they find good pasture lands. The chief man is called the Mir. Isn't that a strange name? He has a very large estate, with big parks, and, I suppose, owns several elephants. A wealthy merchant of Caper out for an airing from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. A bullock cart in Agra. Here are some more bullocks, drawing quite a different kind of cart from any we have seen before. What fine-looking animals they are, and how patient they seem, in spite of the fact that the rope harness goes right through their nostrils and over their ears, which must be uncomfortable, to say the least. See what a very elaborate canopy the carriage has, in the shape of a dome, but the wheels, somehow, do not seem to belong to the top, for they are made of wood and are very clumsy. We should know at once that this was in India, the land of sharp contrasts. Travelers in India often say that in that country the most magnificent and the meanest objects are found side by side. A beautiful palace and a miserable little hut are seen together, or a wonderful bit of carving beside cheap red or yellow glass ornaments. Carts like the one in the picture are very often seen at Agra, the city where so many wonderful buildings are found. There are many interesting things in India that we should like to see. You know, it is a very large country, and there are many different kinds of scenery, and in some places it is very beautiful. The different castes or classes of people each have manners and customs of their own, and the dress of the natives tells at once to what caste they belong, but it would be hard for us to remember all the differences. A typical bullock driver with clumsy wooden-wheeled car, at Agra, India from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. The royal carriage of Rewa. Surely the owner of this gorgeous turnout must be a very important person in India. See the magnificent trappings of the elephants and the many mahouts, or drivers. To own an elephant is quite a distinction, and only titled or extremely wealthy people have carriages drawn by the huge animals. Would you like to ride after them? It seems to me it would be a very slow way of getting about, but no doubt it would be impressive. The elephants in the picture belong to a Maharaja or great prince, and they have come from Rewa, a little state somewhat north from the center of India. You know, India is a very large country and it is divided into states, some large, some small, each of which has a native ruler. These rulers live in great splendor and dress in magnificent fashion, with jewels and many colored garments. Look at these elephants and see how gay they are. Their trunks are painted, a big medallion hangs between their eyes and a gorgeously embroidered cloth covers their backs and hangs down almost to the ground on both sides of them. In addition to this, they have big chains around their necks, which I should think would be in the way when they walked, shouldn't you? Can you imagine how all this would look in blues and greens and reds, with the glitter of gold and silver sparkling in the bright sunlight? Richly adorned elephants and carriage of H. the Maharaja of Rewa, India, from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. On the road to Jericho, dear me, this donkey seems to have a heavy load on his back, don't you think so? These women have come from Bethlehem, the place where the baby Jesus was born hundreds of years ago. You know that beautiful story, don't you? The road that we see in the picture is the way to Jericho, which was once a very prosperous city, with rich fields all about, and springs of water bubbling up and keeping the fields moist and green. Now all that is left of the old city is a heap of ruins. The springs are there and the fields are green and beautiful, and covered with wild flowers, but there are no gardens. Tribes of people called Bedouins live around there. They do not settle in any one place to live, however, but roam about from one part of the wilderness to another. They sometimes act as guides to show travelers the country. The men on the burros in the picture look like Bedouins. The hills near Jericho are not very attractive to look at, they are covered with stones, and not many trees or flowers grow on them, but some of the hills in Palestine are beautiful, with large groves of olive trees, and masses of green foliage. Do you know where Palestine is? Look on your map of Asia and you will see it by the Red Sea, and you will find many stories in the Bible about the old cities and places there. It is the land where Jesus lived, and is wonderfully interesting to visit. Women of Bethlehem on the road to Jericho, from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. The tombs of the caliphs, Egypt. These camels seem very much dressed up, don't they, with their richly ornamented coverings, and see, the front one has a net over his head with tassels hanging from it. The carriage, too, is very elaborately carved. See the women in it, with veils over their faces. The Egyptian women of the higher classes always wear veils like these out of doors, so that only their eyes can be seen. The buildings that these ships of the desert, as camels are sometimes called, are passing are the tombs of the caliphs, just outside of Cairo, Egypt. They were built centuries ago, for you know Egyptian history goes back farther than that of almost any other country in the world, and many interesting old buildings still remain. In the tombs shown in the picture are buried some of the caliphs, or rulers, of Egypt, who lived thousands of years ago. The tomb of Kate Bey, which we see in the middle of the picture, has a beautiful minaret or tower with 3 balconies. Can you count them? The top of the tower is shaped something like a pear, with a straight spire at the top. Most of the other domes have a half moon at the top. Do you see them, and do you notice the lace-like patterns carved on the domes? In olden times the Egyptian people did much carving, and painted a great deal too, so their houses and buildings were all beautifully decorated and colored. You have probably seen Egyptian designs many times in the museums near your home, or in books, haven't you? A ship of the desert, passing the tombs of the caliphs, Cairo, Egypt from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. The pyramids and the Sphinx, in Egypt. Here are more camels, which have brought these men to the pyramids and the great Sphinx of Egypt. Have you ever heard of them? That enormous head that you see in the picture belongs to the Sphinx, isn't it strange looking? It is of stone and has stood there so many ages that no one knows when it was carved. The Sphinx has a body like a lion's, which could be seen a long time ago, but now the sand has covered up most of it. See the big pyramids in the picture. They are wonderful to look at. It seems as though they must always have been there, like the big rocks and hills, but men built them many, many years ago, long before the invention of any of the machinery that people use now to lift stones. The biggest pyramid of all was built for the tomb of a king. Travelers often climb this large pyramid, but it is not very easy, as one has to step from one big stone to another. If you go to Cairo, in Egypt, someday, you will go out and see these wonderful things. There are many other strange sights in Cairo. The life there is quite different from that of any other country, and the people have customs which have come down through thousands of years. In the museum there we should see an interesting collection of old toys and paintings, and so many other things that it would be hard to name them all. Tourists on Egyptian transports passing the Great Sphinx and Pyramids, Egypt from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. On the desert of Sahara. Now we are on the Great Desert of Sahara, in Egypt. Isn't this a queer way of riding? That looks like a little house on the camel's back, but it does not look as though it would be very comfortable to ride in. This camel is dressed up too, with a net and saddle cloth. Do you suppose he likes all this covering? The desert is a strange place. For miles and miles there is no water, nothing but great stretches of sand with queer plants growing in it, and pebbles all about, blue, pink, green, and other colors. Some people think that long ago there was a sea where the desert is now, and often travelers find shells, which make it seem as though water must have been there once. The Arabs, the people who live on the desert, are shepherds with big flocks of sheep and goats, and many camels and horses. They have no homes to live in always, but have to move about from place to place, wherever they can find water. Of course, living in this way, they can have no houses, but have to live in tents, which can be easily carried whenever they move. Sometimes a terrible storm comes up on the desert, the wind blows, and drives great clouds of sand before it, making it almost impossible for a person to see. In a storm like this the people have to keep moving and to try to get out of the storm, for if they stayed in one place the sand would soon cover them. The Arabs Shibriya, a home on the Great Sahara Desert from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. Before the Petrovsky Palace in a troika we do not often see carriages in America with 3 horses, do we? In Russia, however, they are used a great deal, and go very rapidly indeed, the middle horse trotting while the others gallop. This gives a peculiar motion to the carriage, as you might suppose. The Russian people are fond of driving extremely fast, and urge their horses on to the greatest speed. See the arch over the middle horse, it is very much ornamented, and the harness is quite gay with all its tassels and bells. A carriage like this with 3 horses is called a troika. This troika has come out from Moscow to the old Petrovsky Palace, which was once the residence of the royal family. You know that Moscow was, a long time ago, the capital of Russia, and it is still one of the principal cities in manufactures and commerce. Going towards it one sees the mass of roofs like a dark green sea, nearer, Many spires and domes attract the eye. The spires seem like a network of gold, the domes are in some cases gilded, in others a deep blue, covered with gold stars, and in still others are tiled with green. In the center of the city is the Kremlin, a hill where the buildings are particularly beautiful, among the shrubs and trees, with the Tower of Ivan the Great rising above them all. At the foot of this tower is the Great Bell of Moscow, the largest in the world. There are hundreds and hundreds of bells in Moscow of all sizes and kinds. A Russian troika, three-horse carriage, before the old Petrovsky Palace in a northwest suburb of Moscow. The palace is not now occupied as a royal residence. The middle horse in a troika trots while the others gallop from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. Near Villefranche here is the grandpa of some little French children, out for a drive with his fine pair of dogs. See how patiently they stand and wait until their master is ready to start. Then they will trot along very soberly, making the queer little cart jolt over the roads about Villefranche. For many, many years this little town has nestled down in its valley among the hills of southern France, and of course one sees there some fine old houses, built centuries ago. Besides these old houses there are a big Gothic cathedral and an old monastery which is now used as a hospital or asylum. Both these buildings are interesting to see. I wonder if you know what kinds of things grow in southern France. They have a great deal of warm weather there. Grapes, did you say? Yes, grapes grow there in profusion, and olives, and mulberries. It is on mulberry leaves that the silkworm feeds, and ever so much silk is made in France and sent all over the world. Then there are numberless little farms or gardens where vegetables and fruits of various kinds are raised. Market day is a great event, everyone must go, and of course all the people in the country places try to grow the choicest vegetables and fruits, and raise the very best fowls. The flowers, too, offered for sale, are beautiful and very fragrant, we should like to see them, and to bring some home with us. The grandpa of Villefranche, South France, out for a drive from a stereograph, copyright, 1904, by Underwood and Underwood, New York. In Seville there has been a wedding in Seville, and now the bride and bridegroom are going off with all the good wishes of their friends. The beautiful horse seems to know that he is taking part in an important event, and he stands very still while the goodbyes are being said. Seville is a very attractive and important city in Spain, on a river with such a long, hard name to say, Guadalquivir. Some parts of the city are below high water level, so that often the river overflows and causes much suffering. Seville has many interesting old Moorish houses, because long ago the Moors came over the Strait of Gibraltar from Morocco to Spain and settled there, building houses in their own style. Some of these houses and palaces are beautiful, with double arches and carved patterns like lacework. The Alcazar was the palace of the Moorish kings and is wonderful to see, although not so marvelous as the Alhambra, at Granada, which the Moors also built. Some day you will read what Washington Irving wrote about it. The Moors were driven out of Spain about the time of Columbus, when Ferdinand and Isabella came to the throne. Most of the houses in Seville are built in the Moorish style, around a court which often has a marble fountain in the center, with beautiful shrubs and orange trees here and there. The streets are very narrow, in some places so narrow that two little burros could not pass if their panniers were full. The departure of the bride and bridegroom, Seville, Spain, from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. Return from grape picking, Malaga. What quantities of grapes we see here! Baskets, barrels and the panniers on the little burro are filled. These people have just come from the vineyards about Malaga, in Spain. Malaga is at the foot of a large range of mountains, the sides of which are covered with vineyards. You know that those delicious white grapes that we get in the markets come from Malaga. Do you know how they grow? The vineyards on the sides of hills or mountains are planted row after row, only a few feet apart, and each row a little higher than the one before it. Every vine is like a little tree by itself, with a trench dug around it to catch the water when it rains. The soil of the vineyards is red. After the grapes are picked, they are packed in cork dust and sent to other parts of Europe and to America. Raisins and wine also come from Malaga in large quantities. They are both made from grapes, raisins by drying the grapes in the sun, and wine from the juice of grapes, so you see how many must be picked every year. Figs and almonds grow in Malaga, and olives. All these things, you know, grow only where it is very warm and sunny. If we went to Spain we should see many olive trees. They look something like plum trees, but are knotty and gnarled and the leaves are a darker green. When the olives are ripe they are a dark glossy purple. Return from the grape picking, Malaga, Spain from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. Driving a dog team in Holland. See these good old dogs harnessed like horses, drawing the strange-looking cart. Do you think your dog would run quietly along the street if you harnessed him this way? I do not believe he would, but these dogs are used to being driven, so they do not mind it at all. In fact, they expect to draw a cart, as the dogs in Holland often do. Today is market day, and the Dutch peasant woman is just coming from town where she has sold all her vegetables and flowers. See the garden just beyond the fence in the picture. What do you think these flowers are? A great many tulips, hyacinths, and crocuses are grown in Holland. It is a great gardening country, every bit of ground is cultivated, and the kingdom is like one big garden crossed by many canals like silver threads. There is a high tower in Utrecht, one of the cities, from which one can see almost the whole country spread out like a map, and it is such a pretty view. The meadows are bright green, and along the canals willow trees, elms, and poplars are seen. Dotted here and there are pretty little villages with houses painted in bright colors, and everywhere are windmills with huge sails. They are used to grind corn and to pump the water from the canals, and in addition to being so useful are very picturesque. The people of Holland are very neat. Every day their houses, sidewalks, and streets are cleaned, and everything put in its best condition. Dignity of a Dutch matron with her dog team. Outskirts of Equessen, Holland from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. Carriage of the 16th century, Sweden. This quaint little carriage was owned by a rich man in Sweden, 300 or 400 years ago. Do you see what a peculiar harness the horse has on? That queer arrangement on his back I should think would be very uncomfortable, shouldn't you? The man's clothing, too, looks strange. Do you see his big funny-looking hat? If we should take a drive in this old carriage, what kind of country do you think we should go through? Sweden is one of the countries that have many different kinds of climate and scenery, so you can understand that it would take a great many days to see it all. In the northern part we should find the winters very long and cold, and the summers short. We should see high mountains, and rivers on which vessels can sail for 200 or 300 miles. Doesn't that seem a long distance? Then we should see thick woods with very big trees in them which are cut down for timber. There are not many cities in the north, and if we kept going toward the middle of the country we should still see only a few, but we should see many farms where beetroot is grown, from which they make sugar. We should see fields of grain, and cows grazing in the meadows. Often we should pass a beautiful lake, blue as the sky, reflecting the country like a mirror. Here the winters are not so cold or long, and as we approached the coast we should find a much warmer climate. Most of the large cities and towns are along the coast. A 16th century carriage of a rich Norseman, Bergoik, Sweden from Stereograph, copyright 1904, by Underwood and Underwood, New York. Taking a ride in Thuso, Scotland. See this dear, shaggy little donkey, doesn't he look full of mischief? Many a happy drive these children have over the roads about Thuso, in Scotland. They are on their way now to the village store. This looks like a very pleasant road, with its long stretches of field and meadow. From Thuso are sent out cattle and sheep and grain, so you see it is a farming country around there. Do you know where Thuso is? Look on your map of Scotland and you will find it, away up in the very northern part on the sea coast. Like many places near the water, it is very rocky, and many paving stones come from there. Scotland is an interesting place, the scenery is beautiful, and there are many wonderful old castles famous in history. Perhaps you have read the stories written by Sir Walter Scott about some of them. His home was in Scotland, and Robert Burns lived there, too. Have you read any of Burns's poems? In olden times the northern part of Scotland was owned by the Highlanders, who lived by raising sheep and cattle, and by hunting. They were divided into clans, or large families of relatives, and were very loyal to one another. Many stirring tales are told of these old times, probably you will read them sometime. Now most of the large estates in the Highlands are owned by English or American people, who spend a short time there every year in shooting and fishing. Young citizens of Thuso, Scotland, on the way to the village store from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. Off for a holiday in a jaunting car. Here is a happy family, off for a long holiday. Grandfather usually has to take passengers about in his jaunting car, but today is a holiday for him too, and he is going to take the family all off for a long drive. Have you ever seen a jaunting car? They are used a great deal in Ireland, and sometimes we see them in America at Newport or other summer resorts. Before one gets accustomed to riding in them, he has to hold on tightly when going around corners, but after a while he gets used to the jolting motion and is not afraid of being tipped out. See the house in the picture. Many cottages in Ireland are like this, of stone or earth with the roof thatched with straw, but a great many have no windows except holes cut in the walls, and the door is so low that one has to stoop to go in. Of course the houses in the cities are different. Dublin is the principal city and is a very beautiful one, with fine houses and buildings. Exquisite lace, made by the peasant women, comes from there, and a kind of cloth called Irish poplin, made of silk and wool. It rains very often in Ireland, so the grass and foliage are bright green, for which reason the island is sometimes called the Emerald Isle. The Irish people say, in England it rains all day, in Scotland it rains all night, but in Ireland it rains both day and night. Off for a holiday in a jaunting car, Ireland from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. In Puerto Rico, here is a whole family out for a drive in their cart drawn by 4 bullocks. This horseless carriage is in Puerto Rico, which means rich harbor. Did you know that Columbus discovered the island of Puerto Rico? It is called the land of perpetual June, because the weather is so fine through the whole year. To be sure, they sometimes have terrible earthquakes and hurricanes, but the people are prepared for these and have cellars or caves to which they go when they see signs of a hurricane coming. They have to take food with them, of course, to last until the storm is over, and sometimes whole villages are destroyed. Except at these times, Puerto Rico is a beautiful place, flowers bloom all the year and the fields are full of growing things. A great deal of coffee grows there on large plantations. You know that Puerto Rico belongs now to the United States, and every afternoon at sunset in the large cities a band plays the Star-Spangled Banner. While it is being played, the flag is lowered and the men take off their hats. It is an impressive sight. There are many interesting things to see in the city streets. The men who sell bananas carry them fastened to a pole, the milkman sometimes carries his large open can of milk on his head, and all of the native people, if they have anything to carry, balance it on their heads, no matter what it is. They are very expert at balancing things in this way. A holiday jaunt in a horseless carriage, Coamo, Puerto Rico from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. In Cuba, surely this is a queer-looking streetcar. Did you ever ride in one like it? Perhaps if we were in Cuba we might take a ride, but if we were in a hurry it would be better to find some other way of traveling. The car seems to be well filled with passengers. I wonder where they are all going. See the boy at the side of the car, with an odd-shaped basket in his hand. Perhaps all these people are going to the tobacco fields, for as you know, a great deal of tobacco is raised in Cuba, and cigars and cigarettes are made in large quantities. Many other things grow there, too. Some plants which belong to tropical or very hot countries grow close beside those found also in colder climates, so there is great variety of plant life. Some fish with very queer names are found in Cuba. There is the giant aguja, a great big fish that sometimes weighs as much as 500 pounds, the snoring ronco, the galligo, the garfish, and several others with names as funny. Do you know what all these fish look like? I'm sure I don't, but if they are like their names they must be strange-looking objects. There are many kinds of animals and insects in Cuba, too. Some of the insects are quite troublesome and we should not care to have them come near us. If one is making a collection of insects, Cuba is a good place in which to find different varieties. A characteristic streetcar. Rapid transit in Cuba from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. Ormond Beach, Florida. Isn't this a fine long beach? Can you see how far it stretches? The sand is just as firm and hard as a floor, so the beach is often used to race on. Automobiles have made unusual records here. The sand is so smooth that they can go at great speed over it. Can you imagine how strange these automobiles would look to a child who had never seen one? We sometimes think the carriages of other countries are queer to look at, but if we had never seen an automobile before, perhaps it would look the strangest of all to us. Indeed, just after dark when the lamps are lighted they look like great monsters with shining eyes and open mouths coming towards one. Did you ever notice it? Wouldn't you love to have a run along this beach, and to paddle in the water? Perhaps sometime you will be in Florida and go to Ormond Beach. Perhaps you have already been there. Florida has water on three sides and there are many beaches of course, but the coast is flat and sandy, with reefs and sandbars that go way out into the ocean, so there are not many good harbors for vessels. On the side where the Atlantic is there are very few. Something grows in Florida that you like very much. I wonder if you know what it is. It grows on trees with dark, glossy leaves. It is round and the color is between a red and yellow. The color has the same name as the fruit, so I can't tell you what it is without telling the name of the fruit. Do you know what it is now? On the famous Ormond Beach. The record-breaking automobile racecourse, Daytona, Florida from Stereograph, copyright 1904, by Underwood and Underwood, New York. The old city of St. Augustine. This funny little cart with enormous wheels has stopped in front of the old gate at St. Augustine, in Florida. Would you like to take a ride through the town? First let us look at the old gate. Hundreds of years ago the city had a wall across one end, and this old gate guarded the entrance. See the sentry boxes where the men on guard used to stay. The door to one of them is right in back of the cart in the picture. Now, if we go through the gate we shall find an interesting old city, quite different from any other in America, Fort St. Augustine was built by Spanish people many, many years ago, and some of the quaint old houses are still there to remind us of the times before our grandfathers lived. The streets are very narrow and the houses peculiarly built, most of them made of coquina, a combination of shells and sand, cut into bricks. At the end of the town near the sea is an old fort, also built with coquina walls, and in going through it we should hear from our guide many strange stories of things that happened long ago. Several times the fort was besieged, but the coquina walls were soft enough so that bullets became embedded in them, and the fort did not receive much injury, but the walls are crumbling now. Another interesting old building is the cathedral with its odd-shaped belfry with 4 bells in it. A relic of the old days, at the famous city gate in the old Spanish town of St. Augustine, Florida from Stereograph, copyright 1905, by Underwood and Underwood, New York. In North Carolina here is a happy farmer taking his family out for a drive in his big ox cart. He is very proud of his cart, and of his little farm where he raises vegetables and melons for the market. When he was a little boy his father and mother were slaves on a large plantation, and although they were treated kindly they belonged, like the horses and dogs, to the white people who owned the plantation. This man is happy to think he is free, and he works hard to keep his family supplied with all they need. See the dear little baby in his mother's lap. Perhaps when he grows up he will go to one of the schools in North Carolina, where the Negroes learn to be good farmers, able to take care of themselves and their families. Perhaps he will be a teacher. This road looks very sandy, doesn't it? You know it is in what is called the Sand Belt of North Carolina. All along the eastern part of the state the country is low and flat, much of it sandy, with here and there a swamp, but farther inland it is good farming country with fine soil. North Carolina has a wonderful climate, and it is so warm and pleasant that a bigger variety of plants grow there than in almost any other state. We should like to see peanuts growing, shouldn't we? They grow in great abundance here. Free and happy in his crude prosperity. Life in the Sand Belt of North Carolina from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. An ox cart in southern Mississippi. This father is taking his family out too. It is a good large family, isn't it? All these pickaninnies live in the house we see in the picture, way down in southern Mississippi. Before the Civil War the colored people in Mississippi were slaves, but now they are free, and many of them live quite happily and contentedly in their little cabins. Numbers of them own small farms and grow cotton and corn, or sometimes sugar cane, from which syrup and molasses are made. Mississippi is one of the states where it is warm weather most of the year. The Gulf of Mexico is just south of it, and the breeze across the water is soft and mild. It rains a great deal in the southern part of the state, and there are many rivers, so the land is overflowed very often. Along the Mississippi River in some places banks called levees have been built, to keep the water in its place, but often after a heavy rain there is so much water in the river that the levees are broken, and then great damage is done. If the river did not sometimes carry off houses these overflows would not be so bad, for the water leaves a kind of mud on the fields, which makes things grow faster and better. There are large numbers of trees in Mississippi. The holly that we use at Christmas time grows there, the fragrant magnolia, the persimmon with its queer puckery fruit, and many other varieties. Rapid transit in southern Mississippi from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. In Central Park these dear little goats give a great deal of pleasure to children in Central Park, New York City. Would you like to take a drive now and see some of the interesting things in the park? It is such a large place that it would take quite a long time to drive about and see everything. Where would you like to go first? Why, of course, you want to see the animals, so we will pay a visit to them. What do you like to see? The monkeys? Well, they are funny, with their wrinkled little faces and paws like tiny hands. Do you like to give them peanuts, and then watch their solemn faces while they crack the shells open? We mustn't stay watching them too long, for there is much in Central Park that we want to see. As we go along we will look at the trees, because here are found all the different kinds that will grow in this climate, and some of them are very beautiful. There is a very famous needle in Central Park. Have you ever seen it? Don't look astonished, for it is quite different from the needles we are accustomed to seeing. Perhaps you would know it better by its other name, obelisk. It is a very tall shaft of stone with curious inscriptions on it, and it is very, very old. First it stood in Heliopolis, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, then it was moved to Alexandria, Egypt. Several years ago it was given to the United States by the Khedive of Egypt. It is now called Cleopatra's Needle. The Goat Carriages, Central Park, New York, from Stereograph, copyright by Underwood and Underwood, New York. On an ostrich farm. Would you like to try a race with this ostrich? I am afraid you would be beaten, for this is a famous trotter, Oliver W., who has made a record for great speed. It looks strange to see an ostrich harnessed into a racing gig, doesn't it? But you know they can go very rapidly, and easily run faster than horses. Do you see all the ostriches in the picture on the other side of the fence? This is a farm in Jacksonville, Florida, where ostriches are raised. You know, so many people want ostrich plumes that it takes a great many to supply them all, and there are ostrich farms in Florida and California, as well as in Mexico and other countries. The first plumes are cut from the birds when they are about 6 or 7 months old, and then about twice a year until they are very old. Ostriches are queer-looking birds, aren't they? See Oliver W.'s long neck, and his feet with only 2 toes, the outside one having no claw. It is wise to keep away from those feet, for ostriches sometimes kick, and very powerfully, too. They are strange birds and do many funny things, so a visit to an ostrich farm is very entertaining. You have heard, haven't you, how they hide their heads in the sand and think no one can see them? When the Arabs of the desert want to catch a wild ostrich, they find it quite easy, for the birds are very apt to run around in circles instead of straight ahead, so the horses soon catch up with them. Exercising Oliver W., who has a trotting record of 2:02. Ostrich Farm, Jacksonville, Florida, from Stereograph, copyright 1904, by Underwood and Underwood, New York. End of the Project Gutenberg ebook. Jogging Round the World. Updated editions will replace the previous one. The old editions will be renamed. Creating the works from print editions not protected by U.S. copyright law means that no one owns a United States copyright in these works, so the Foundation, and you, can copy and distribute it in the United States without permission and without paying copyright royalties. Special rules, set forth in the General Terms of Use part of this license, apply to copying and distributing Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark concept and trademark. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark, and may not be used if you charge for an ebook, except by following the terms of the trademark license, including paying royalties for use of the Project Gutenberg trademark. If you do not charge anything for copies of this ebook, complying with the trademark license is very easy. You may use this ebook for nearly any purpose, such as creation of derivative works, reports, performances, and research. Project Gutenberg ebooks may be modified and printed and given away. You may do practically anything in the United States with ebooks not protected by U.S. copyright law. Redistribution is subject to the trademark license, especially commercial redistribution. Start, Full license. The full Project Gutenberg license. Please read this before you distribute or use this work to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark mission of promoting the free distribution of electronic works. By using or distributing this work, or any other work associated in any way with the phrase Project Gutenberg, you agree to comply with all the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark license available with this file or online at www.gutenberg.org/license. Section 1. General Terms of Use and Redistributing Project Gutenberg Trademark Electronic Works 1.a. By reading or using any part of this Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work, you indicate that you have read, understand, agree to and accept all the terms of this license and intellectual property, trademark/copyright, agreement. If you do not agree to abide by all the terms of this agreement, you must cease using and return or destroy all copies of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works in your possession. If you paid a fee for obtaining a copy of or access to a Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work and you do not agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement, you may obtain a refund from the person or entity to whom you paid the fee as set forth in paragraph 1.e.8. 1.b. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark. It may only be used on or associated in any way with an electronic work by people who agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement. There are a few things that you can do with most Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works even without complying with the full terms of this agreement. See paragraph 1.c below. There are a lot of things you can do with Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works if you follow the terms of this agreement and help preserve free future access to Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works. See paragraph 1.e below. 1.c. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the foundation or PGLOF, owns a compilation copyright in the collection of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works. Nearly all the individual works in the collection are in the public domain in the United States. If an individual work is unprotected by copyright law in the United States and you are located in the United States, we do not claim a right to prevent you from copying, distributing, performing, displaying, or creating derivative works based on the work as long as all references to Project Gutenberg are removed. Of course, we hope that you will support the Project Gutenberg trademark mission of promoting free access to electronic works by freely sharing Project Gutenberg trademark works in compliance with the terms of this agreement for keeping the Project Gutenberg trademark name associated with the work. You can easily comply with the terms of this agreement by keeping this work in the same format with its attached full Project Gutenberg trademark license when you share it without charge with others. 1.d. The copyright laws of the place where you are located also govern what you can do with this work. Copyright laws in most countries are in a constant state of change. If you are outside the United States, check the laws of your country in addition to the terms of this agreement before downloading, copying, displaying, performing, distributing or creating derivative works based on this work or any other Project Gutenberg trademark work. The Foundation makes no representations concerning the copyright status of any work in any country other than the United States. 1.e. Unless you have removed all references to Project Gutenberg, 1.e.1. The following sentence, with active links to, or other immediate access to, the full Project Gutenberg trademark license must appear prominently whenever any copy of a Project Gutenberg trademark work, any work on which the phrase Project Gutenberg appears, or with which the phrase Project Gutenberg is associated, is accessed, displayed, performed, viewed, copied or distributed. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. 1.E.2. If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work is derived from texts not protected by U.S. copyright law, does not contain a notice indicating that it is posted with permission of the copyright holder, the work can be copied and distributed to anyone in the United States without paying any fees or charges. If you are redistributing or providing access to a work with the phrase Project Gutenberg associated with or appearing on the work, you must comply either with the requirements of paragraphs 1.E.1 through 1.E.7 or obtain permission for the use of the work and the Project Gutenberg trademark as set forth in paragraphs 1.E.8 or 1.E.9. 1.E.3. If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work is posted with the permission of the copyright holder, your use and distribution must comply with both paragraphs 1.E.1 through 1.E.7 and any additional terms imposed by the copyright holder. Additional terms will be linked to the Project Gutenberg trademark license for all works posted with the permission of the copyright holder found at the beginning of this work. 1.E.4. Do not unlink or detach or remove the full Project Gutenberg trademark license terms from this work, or any files containing a part of this work or any other work associated with Project Gutenberg trademark. 1.E.5. Do not copy, display, perform, distribute or redistribute this electronic work, or any part of this electronic work, without prominently displaying the sentence set forth in paragraph 1.E.1 with active links or immediate access to the full terms of the Project Gutenberg trademark license. 1.E.6. You may convert to and distribute this work in any binary, compressed, marked up, non-proprietary or proprietary form, including any word processing or hypertext form. However, if you provide access to or distribute copies of a Project Gutenberg trademark work in a format other than plain vanilla ASCII or other format used in the official version posted on the official Project Gutenberg trademark website, www.gutenberg.org, you must, at no additional cost, fee, or expense to the user, provide a copy, a means of exporting a copy, or a means of obtaining a copy upon request, of the work in its original plain vanilla ASCII or other form. Any alternate format must include the full Project Gutenberg trademark license as specified in paragraph 1.E.1. 1.E.7. Do not charge a fee for access to, viewing, displaying, performing, copying or distributing any Project Gutenberg trademark works unless you comply with paragraph 1.E.8 or 1.E.9. 1.E.8. You may charge a reasonable fee for copies of or providing access to or distributing Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works provided that, you pay a royalty fee of 20% of the gross profits you derive from the use of Project Gutenberg trademark works calculated using the method you already use to calculate your applicable taxes. The fee is owed to the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark, but he has agreed to donate royalties under this paragraph to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Royalty payments must be paid within 60 days following each date on which you prepare, or are legally required to prepare, your periodic tax returns. Royalty payments should be clearly marked as such and sent to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation at the address specified in Section 4, Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. You provide a full refund of any money paid by a user who notifies you in writing, or by email, within 30 days of receipt that he does not agree to the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark license. You must require such a user to return or destroy all copies of the works possessed in a physical medium and discontinue all use of and all access to other copies of Project Gutenberg trademark works. You provide, in accordance with paragraph 1.F.3, a full refund of any money paid for a work or a replacement copy, if a defect in the electronic work is discovered and reported to you within 90 days of receipt of the work. You comply with all other terms of this agreement for free distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark works. 1.e.9. If you wish to charge a fee or distribute a Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work or group of works on different terms than are set forth in this agreement, you must obtain permission in writing from the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the manager of the Project Gutenberg trademark. Contact the Foundation as set forth in Section 3 below. 1.f1.f.1. Project Gutenberg volunteers and employees expend considerable effort to identify, do copyright research on, transcribe and proofread works not protected by U.S. copyright law in creating the Project Gutenberg trademark collection. Despite these efforts, Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works, and the medium on which they may be stored, may contain defects, such as, but not limited to, incomplete, inaccurate or corrupt data, transcription errors, a copyright or other intellectual property infringement, a defective or damaged disk or other medium, a computer virus, or computer codes that damage or cannot be read by your equipment. 1.f.2. Limited warranty, disclaimer of damages, except for the right of replacement or refund described in paragraph 1.f.3, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark, and any other party distributing a Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work under this agreement, disclaim all liability to you for damages, costs, and expenses, including legal fees. You agree that you have no remedies for negligence, strict liability, breach of warranty or breach of contract except those provided in paragraph 1.f.3. You agree that the Foundation, the trademark owner, and any distributor under this agreement will not be liable to you for actual, direct, indirect, consequential, punitive, or incidental damages even if you give notice of the possibility of such damage. 1.f.3. Limited right of replacement or refund. If you discover a defect in this electronic work within 90 days of receiving it, you can receive a refund of the money, if any, you paid for it by sending a written explanation to the person you received the work from. If you received the work on a physical medium, you must return the medium with your written explanation. The person or entity that provided you with the defective work may elect to provide a replacement copy in lieu of a refund. If you received the work electronically, the person or entity providing it to you may choose to give you a second opportunity to receive the work electronically in lieu of a refund. If the second copy is also defective, you may demand a refund in writing without further opportunities to fix the problem. 1.f.4. Except for the limited right of replacement or refund set forth in paragraph 1.f.3, this work is provided to you as is, with no other warranties of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to warranties of merchantability or fitness for any purpose. 1.f.5. Some states do not allow disclaimers of certain implied warranties or the exclusion or limitation of certain types of damages. If any disclaimer or limitation set forth in this agreement violates the law of the state applicable to this agreement, the agreement shall be interpreted to make the maximum disclaimer or limitation permitted by the applicable state law. The invalidity or unenforceability of any provision of this agreement shall not void the remaining provisions. 1.f.6. Indemnity. You agree to indemnify and hold the Foundation, the trademark owner, any agent or employee of the Foundation, anyone providing copies of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works in accordance with this agreement, and any volunteers associated with the production, promotion, and distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works, harmless from all liability, costs, and expenses, including legal fees. that arise directly or indirectly from any of the following which you do or cause to occur. A. Distribution of this or any Project Gutenberg trademark work. B. Alteration, modification, or additions or deletions to any Project Gutenberg trademark work, and C. Any defect you cause. Section 2. Information about the mission of Project Gutenberg trademark. Project Gutenberg trademark is synonymous with the free distribution of electronic works in formats readable by the widest variety of computers, including obsolete, old, middle-aged, and new computers. It exists because of the efforts of hundreds of volunteers and donations from people in all walks of life. Volunteers and financial support to provide volunteers with the assistance they need are critical to reaching Project Gutenberg trademark's goals and ensuring that the Project Gutenberg trademark collection will remain freely available for generations to come. In 2001, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation was created to provide a secure and permanent future for Project Gutenberg trademark and future generations. To learn more about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation and how your efforts and donations can help, see sections 3 and 4 and the Foundation information page at www.gutenberg.org. Section 3. Information about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation is a non-profit 501(c)(3) educational corporation organized under the laws of the state of Mississippi and granted tax-exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. The Foundation's IN or Federal Tax Identification Number is 64-6221541. Contributions to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation are tax-deductible to the full extent permitted by U.S. federal laws and your state's laws. The Foundation's business office is located at 809 North 1500 West, Salt Lake City, Utah 841-16808-596-1887. Email contact links and up-to-date contact information can be found at the Foundation's website and official page at www.gutenberg.org/contact. Section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Project Gutenberg trademark depends upon and cannot survive without widespread public support and donations to carry out its mission of increasing the number of public domain and licensed works that can be freely distributed in machine-readable form accessible by the widest array of equipment, including outdated equipment. Many small donations, $1 to $5,000, are particularly important to maintaining tax-exempt status with the IRS. The Foundation is committed to complying with the laws regulating charities and charitable donations in all 50 states of the United States. Compliance requirements are not uniform and it takes a considerable effort, much paperwork, and many fees to meet and keep up with these requirements. We do not solicit donations in locations where we have not received written confirmation of compliance. To send donations or determine the status of compliance for any particular state, visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. While we cannot and do not solicit contributions from states where we have not met the solicitation requirements, we know of no prohibition against accepting unsolicited donations from donors in such states who approach us with offers to donate. International donations are gratefully accepted, but we cannot make any statements concerning tax treatment of donations received from outside the United States. U.S. laws alone swamp our small staff. Please check the Project Gutenberg web pages for current donation methods and addresses. Donations are accepted in a number of other ways, including checks, online payments, and credit card donations. To donate, please visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. Section 5. General information about Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works. Professor Michael S. Hart was the originator of the Project Gutenberg trademark concept of a library of electronic works that could be freely shared with anyone. For 40 years, he produced and distributed Project Gutenberg trademark ebooks with only a loose network of volunteer support. Project Gutenberg trademark ebooks are often created from several printed editions, all of which are confirmed as not protected by copyright in the US unless a copyright notice is included. Thus, we do not necessarily keep ebooks in compliance with any particular paper edition. Most people start at our website, which has the main PG search facility, www.gutenberg.org. This website includes information about Project Gutenberg trademark, including how to make donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, how to help produce our new ebooks, and how to subscribe to our email newsletter to hear about new ebooks. Jogging round the world contents in the land of the Eskimos in the old park at Nara. A Japanese lady in a Yamakaegyo, the unicycle of Korea. A Korean lady in her palanquin. A Korean general in the streets of Seoul. Cebu, in the Philippines. A Carabao tandem in Luzon going into Shanghai. In Canton, China. The handsome cab of Colombo, Ceylon. Riding in a palanquin in Calcutta. A two-storied camel wagon at Agra. An elephant from Caper. A bullock cart in Agra. The royal carriage of Riwat on the road to Jericho. The tombs of the caliphs, Egypt. The pyramids and the Sphinx, in Egypt. On the desert of Sahara before the Petrovsky Palace in a troika near Villefranche. In Seville. Return from grape picking, Malaga. Driving a dog team in Holland. Carriage of the 16th century, Sweden. Taking a ride in Thurso, Scotland. Off for a holiday in a jaunting car in Puerto Rico. In Cuba. Ormond Beach, Florida. The old city of St. Augustine in North Carolina. An ox cart in southern Mississippi. In Central Park on an ostrich farm. The full Project Gutenberg license 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, PG 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80.